welcome. Thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to take a look at Venus's transit through the sign of Aquarius. Venus is about relating, but it's also about money. The sign of Aquarius is known to be very much about the group, how we connect, our higher ideals. So what can we expect over the next 25 days? I'm going to take you through this. Venus is going to forge some very powerful contacts. The first with Pluto in this sign for 220 years, but it also aligns with Mars, the planet of passion, exactly on the 22nd of February. Now there is a right angle to Jupiter. Venus in traditional astrology, the lesser benefic, and Jupiter the greater, towards the end of February, but a much more potentially disruptive angle to Uranus in the early part of March, but also two very healing influences too. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me. If you're a returning visitor, it's lovely to have you with me once more. If you've got any comments, please share them. I interact with each one. Your likes, comments, shares and subscriptions are truly appreciated. I'm just going to give you a brief flavour of how I'm going to structure the video. So I'll tell you about the archetypes of Venus, what we can expect in the sign of Aquarius. I'm going to tell you about the event chart. So what can we learn as Venus at that exact moment moves into Aquarius? What will that likely mean for the following 25 days? And then I'm just going to take a look inside all of those very important aspects. And then I'm going to just share your forecast for your sun or ascendant from Aries through to Pisces. Now, if you'd like to know more about astrology, why don't you take advantage of my very unique and special offer? It's totally individual to each person it's written for. You can get 30% off and get your life roadmap report, but also your 12-month forecast. Please see the link below. No two charts are the same, and these will give you a searing insight into your prospects, but also the patterns that are played out in your life so far. Please see the link below for more. So Venus moves into Aquarius on the 16th of February at 4:05 Universal Time. It's going to be in this sign through to the 11th of March, 25 days. Now, let's just have a little look at the archetypes of Venus. As I mentioned before, it can be about relating, but also about loot. Why is it about money? Well, Venus is the ruler, the sole domiciliary ruler of the sign of Taurus, which is the second zodiac sign, which of course is earth and fixed, and has a real appreciation of sensuality. So Venus's rulership of Taurus is very much to do with how we feel about ourselves, so our self-worth, but also our values, but also that everyday money. The sign of Scorpio is about shared resources, longer term finance. But Venus also gives us an appreciation of good food and good wine. It is the ruler, the sign of Taurus, of agriculture. Venus can also be very, very appreciative of the earthy goodnesses that are not so much financially rooted, much more in terms of aesthetics. So if you're someone who likes to grow your own vegetables or eat organics, you're really interested in buying products that are natural, those instincts could come from second house being in your natal chart or some Taurus influences. Now, the theme of Libra is about relating. We could say it's about diplomacy, harmony. Venus rules the seventh house in astrology, which is known as the descendant. That's where we connect to others. That's the type of relationships we want. And it can be a sweet spot if Venus is in the seventh house, or perhaps we have the moon in the seventh house, can make us very diplomatic. So that's that energy of Venus in that sense. But the sign of Libra is also very much about cultivation. It can be about using subtlety in order to build contacts with others. But that can come from being a good listener and being very attuned to how people feel about things, and being prepared to give and take. So find that midpoint between what we want and what others want. Now, of course, the sign of Aquarius is a fixed sign, just like Taurus is, whereas the sign of Libra is cardinal, so very much a leader. But Venus in Aquarius has a particular resonance because the third decan of the sign of Aquarius, each sign, of course, divided into 3 units of 10, is actually sub-ruled by Venus. So Venus can do well in Aquarius, particularly in those last 10 degrees. But the sign of Aquarius can be very much to do with higher values, because if we think about how the zodiac is unfolding, the sign of Capricorn is about culmination, but in the physical world, so very much to do with property, success, goals, ambitions, doing well in the tangible parts of life. Whereas Aquarius is more evolved, it's more about how we collectively feel, can be about friendships. Because of the co-ruler Uranus can be future orientated, the other co-ruler Saturn can be more resistant to change. So we do have a dichotomy there and a tension between the part of Aquarius that can resist and the part of Aquarius that wants to experiment. However, Venus moving into Aquarius is interesting because people who have Venus in Aquarius in their natal charts can often be, or Venus in the 11th house, can often have a little bit of a different approach to relating. For example, can be very non-judgmental if people are different to them. Can have some unusual relationships, different age gaps, getting to know people from different cultural backgrounds. One of the things that Venus in Aquarius does, I feel, is seeks out truth, but also appreciates friendship within any relationship. Now, whether we're talking about a personal or sexual relationship, we do have commonalities, and I think Venus in Aquarius has an ability to celebrate those. But also it can encourage people to be a bit more unusual about how they dress, potentially. If it's an Aquarius chart that has more Saturnian influence, then maybe it's quite sophisticated. If it's more radically influenced by Uranus, then that could be someone who really dazzles with bright hair and different types of more daring clothing. But certainly it can see an appreciation of the modern approach to relationships. So, for example, cohabiting, not necessarily in any kind of formal way in terms of marriage. It could be having friendships that have some benefits at times. I think you know what I'm saying. But also, it could be somebody who's perfectly happy to not actually have a relationship, to celebrate their independence, because the sign of Aquarius is a sign that does appreciate that for sure. Now, on the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart wheel. Now, I'm keeping it simple on this particular video and using the event chart based on solar, from a solar perspective, with the ascendant at 0 degrees Aries, so the start of the astrological journey. And we can see that not only do we have Venus in Aquarius, we also have Pluto, the aforementioned Mars, but also Mercury. And that's interesting because Mercury, like Venus, rules a decan of Aquarius, the second decan, but also is exalted in this sign, and that's within its second decan sub-rulership in this particular event at 18 degrees. We also have the Sun. So what a stellium that is. Anybody who's born about now is going to be quite the leader, someone who's going to have an ability to work collectively with others, but also be very strong in their individuality. Now, the other thing that comes out from this chart, if we look at the position of the moon, it's in Taurus. Moon loves being in Taurus, second really to being in its home sign of Cancer, but there's a mutual receptivity because although the moon is just at the end of Taurus, it is in a trine within 2 degrees of Venus, and of course Venus rules Taurus, so mutual receptivity. And also Pluto in a wonderful trine with the position of the moon. Tension points, well, we do have Mercury in a square with Uranus, So it could be that we're going to encounter somebody who might be a bit resistant to some of the ways that we want to go about our relationships, and that can create some electricity for sure. But let's just look at those really powerful aspects. Now, I mentioned to you that Venus immediately connects with Pluto. The exact time is on the 17th, but it actually started to connect really in a disassociate way, so Venus in a different sign to Pluto, from the 13th within 3 degrees. And they're going to be in contact through to the 19th. So what does it mean when someone has Venus conjunct Pluto in their natal chart? Or perhaps in an opposition or a square? Well, I feel that the conjunction is more joined up. Of course, it would depend on what other angles or aspects there were to that particular influence. But I feel that somebody is going to take their love life very, very seriously. And one of the things that this aspect is asking us all to think about is is where we're most invested, whether it's within our network, our alliances, our belief system, because remember, Aquarius can be very much to do with those higher ideals, or it is to do with our love life. I feel that the need for sincerity is really ramped up quite considerably. And if there is a situation where we feel controlled or trapped, or someone's not playing very fair or wants some kind of leverage over us, Pluto, then that can cause some problems. But this combination is very, very good if you are someone who's very artistic or creative or very future orientated, has a real instinct of different trends. But it's certainly one of those influences that can be very full on. So if you are in a relationship, I think if there is a connection between you that goes beyond just the daily structure and the shared things around children and interests, if you have a shared connection in terms of your values, you can really celebrate it. If your relationship has some tensions, whatever type of tie it is, try to remember the things you do have in common, because we all, as subjects of this earth, we do have some commonalities, because it would be easy to see our glass in any kind of relationship situation is half empty. Now, I told you about Venus combining with Pluto. Now, they're within 2.5 degrees on this event, which is very, very close. So we're still feeling the raw power and energy of the conjunction between Mars and Pluto. Now, you may recall that Mars moved into the sign of Aquarius on the 13th of February. It applied in an exact conjunction to Pluto on the 14th, on Valentine's Day. Now, I did see a psychic, the video came up on YouTube saying that Mars was applying to Pluto for the first time in 120 years. Well, Mars applied to Pluto in March 2022 in Capricorn. The truth is that Mars was applying to Pluto for the first time in Aquarius for 220 years. So the astrology in terms of Venus applying to Pluto almost straight away on the 17th, and then exactly applying to Mars on the 22nd, also sees Venus in contact with Mars within 3 degrees from now through to the 29th of the month. So nearly the last 2 weeks of the month of February. So that's going to be really interesting, because obviously with Venus, especially through its Taurus rulership, we're talking about sensuality. Mars is about the raw passion. And Mars can also be quite urgent, so it can be about the need for instant gratification. The sign of Aquarius being about friendship, but also potentially sociability, meeting up, shared interests, group meetups and so on. It could be that there's going to be much greater activity around those areas in general. But also I feel that people are going to find their voice much more collectively. And we have seen this ever since Pluto moved into Aquarius on the 21st of January. We've seen a lot of direct action in terms of people articulating their dissatisfaction, particularly with governments, and protesting against wars. But the combination of Venus and Mars, which peaks on the 22nd, it is very ardent. It's a bit of an old-fashioned word, that, but certainly a very exciting link. If you recall, when I did a recent video, I was saying that Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell and also Jeffrey Epstein all had or have Venus conjunct Mars in the natal chart. So in a love situation, subjects with this particular aspect really do thrive on excitement, the thrill of the chase. And of course, because Aquarius can be quite friendly, the more we meet up with people, the more we may actually encounter someone who makes our pulse race. But if you are a creative person, once more, this combination can be a push to try to raise your profile. And the more people you can network with, very Aquarius, the better it's going to be. Now, the other aspect that I should tell you about is the last week of the month of February, when the diet plan that you may have decided to start at the start of the year in your New Year's resolutions could get profoundly tested. If you're meeting up with friends in the last week of this month, the chances are you're really going to want to make jolly, enjoy the good food and the good wine. But as I say, when it comes to those calorific goodies, temptation may be very high and resistance very low. Now, there's two superbly healing aspects on the 1st of March. Venus forges a beautiful link with the node, the North Node, and the South Node, but also a great link to Chiron. If there's something we want to heal, well, communication, Aquarius, perhaps being less judgmental can also be very helpful. Now, obviously, Chiron and the node are going to meet in an exact conjunction on the 5th of March. So they're building up towards that, but it's the first that Venus picks up on them. But Venus does square up with Uranus in the first week of next month. And if your love relationship or your friendship circle is a bit dull and a bit predictable, this is a great opportunity to try to shake things up. But Uranus in Taurus can resist change a little bit. And so there's going to be some interesting things around finances in terms of the wider world. So injustices that people have spoken out quite consistently, particularly with Uranus squaring up with Saturn, which came to an end in the autumn of 2022, but was broadly around for a couple of years. We could see a bit more of that, especially when people become more conscious. Food, remember, the cost of food, or the fact the availability of food. Maybe people are going to become more outspoken about how much they get for producing food. Now, that's obviously been a theme with a lot of these farmers, quite understandably, of course, but as consumers who are feeling the pinch, the bottom line is how much you need to pay. So something that's out of balance is going to be discussed in a big way then. So just to recap, sign of Aquarius is very friendly, can be a bit detached, cool at times, likes its own space, non-judgmental, can be unusual in its mores. Venus there can be a really nice place for Venus to be in terms of friendships. I've got Venus in Aquarius conjunct my moon. My wife has got Venus in Aquarius conjunct my sun. So that gives you an idea. I suppose our relationship is a little bit unique, but that gives you an idea of how Venus will work. It enables us to have perhaps less standard or less formulaic relationships in the way that Capricorn energy expected us to conform very much to how it's always been done. Well, we're going through a time for humankind, people kind, where things are going to be shook up in quite a radical way. In some ways it's going to be challenging, and in some ways it's going to be very exciting. But remember, Aquarius is about teamwork, so the more we can collaborate with people, whether it's our neighbours, in our community, with our colleagues, anyone that we have a link with, the more we can find that common ground and use the charm of Venus, the passion of Mars, the desire for change in a positive way with Pluto, then that is what we can expect from Venus's journey through the sign of Aquarius. Please stay with me as I share each of your 12 zodiac signs. So Aries, Venus moving into Aquarius is a brilliant opportunity to get in contact with people, reach out to people who are important to you. You may find yourself being asked to go on some kind of trip or get a last minute invitation to something, perhaps by people you don't even know that well, but try to take it because it could prove to be really uplifting. The more you can expand your network through your interests, your hobbies, your creative talents, the better it can be. We all know that Venus can be linked to love, but remember it can be linked to loot. So your connections are going to be vitally important over this next 25 days. It could also be that you're going to encounter someone in a very fated way, and that could be something that you find to be really, really very revelatory. You know, you could just for no reason bump into someone and get talking and find that you've got some mutual interests or some history, or you know people from the past. So those kind of coincidences are certainly not out of the question at the present time. So Taurus, when it comes to your professional situation, charm will take you everywhere, but of course you know that. But what you have at the moment is extra oomph, which comes from Mars, because Mars is giving you more gravitas, more self-belief, more authority. Now Pluto with Mars and Venus suggests you have to use this wisely, because, you know, even if you are very skilled at building up relationships with people, if they suddenly realize that actually it's all about what you wanted from the situation and it's not so much about a shared and mutual benefit, that could cause a problem. Also, in any kind of professional relationship at the moment, if you are employed by someone or work for someone where you feel that in some ways they use charm to control you but don't necessarily recognize your talents, that could be a factor. But if you are wanting to take a romantic involvement to the next stage of commitment, that's entirely possible over the next few weeks. It's also possible, at Taurus, that you could connect to someone through your professional situation, your work, or perhaps in your community. Your way of coming across is definitely given an added sheen at the present time, which can be very valuable to you. So Gemini, Venus moving into your ninth house is a really interesting one, because the ninth house can be about the higher truth, and the sign of Aquarius can be about our higher purpose, the more spiritual dimension. And whatever your relationships are, you could go through quite an intense period of really trying to understand the meaning of them. But also, if you're someone who loves to break out and do things more spontaneously, that's a great thing to consider, particularly in any kind of relationship that perhaps has become a little bit too predictable. You know, you are a sign that needs a lot of mental stimulation, so experimentation, whether it's in terms of your work, money, Venus, or in terms of your associations, or education. You may find your passion for education at the moment is really incredibly strong, and downloading all sorts of information can really give you a lot of stimulation. You can also find yourself being attracted to different cultures or someone from a completely different background to you. If you have been, despite the fact that you're a mutable sign, if you have been quite rigid about some of your belief systems in the past, they could go through something of an upgrade over the next few weeks. So Cancer, the chances are that you could have some kind of windfall over the next couple of weeks. Maybe it will come through a payout on an insurance or investment situation, or a property, or someone you're closely involved with can have some good fortune. Or perhaps if you work in business, despite the fact that the general marketing and business environment is a little bit challenging, it may be something that you've done over a long period of time can come back to you in an extremely auspicious way. But of course, Venus isn't just about money, it is about relationship. And the 8th house is where we're all in. And when you get Venus and Pluto together in the 8th house, oh my word, that's either all in or all out. So if there is somebody that's not coming up to your high standards and you've given them every chance, there may be part of you that wants to move on, because that's what transformations can create. However, equally, if you're single, you may find that more flirtatious type of encounters don't really do it for you so much. You're wanting to come up against someone who can really move your senses, someone who can help you to evolve in a very potent way. If you are someone who's very comfortable with intimacy and you are also lucky enough to be in a close relationship at the present time, things could be hot, hot, hot over the next few weeks. Leo, you have a reputation of being the most charismatic member of the zodiac, and when you're on form, you can just draw so much to you. You can also radiate out a lot of warmth, be very affectionate, very kind. But having Venus join up with the duo of Mars and Pluto, which is quite raw and much more assertive and perhaps quite militant, you may have put your foot down over the last few days about a matter that you feel very strongly about, and it could be about a boundary. But then again, you may have found that little bit of extra Dutch courage to make a move towards someone that you really find enticing. What you get with Venus is you can bring more of the velvet glove to the steel fist that is Mars and Pluto in your 7th house. So whether you're negotiating something, having a bit of a tussle with someone, setting your boundary, trying to link out to someone in a way, Venus brings that much more charm. You can really be quite coquettish in the way that you get your points across. But if you are wanting to bring a relationship into your world, if that is important to you, and you do encounter someone over the next few weeks, don't be surprised if people become much more conscious of your star quality. It really can shine out, but also your ability to tune into others can be heightened, and your listening skills in particular be more refined. So Virgo, you can be very self-sacrificing and often do some very thoughtful gestures, particularly around relationships. And it is those practical things like making someone a really nice cup of tea when they've come in after a hard day, or saying, look, you know, I know it's your turn to cook tonight, but I'm going to do it. Those thoughtful parts of your nature are really, really lovely. You also have a gift for tuning in to what can help other people. And the 6th house, where Venus is moved into, is very much about the basic archetype of your sign. It's about being hardworking, precise, very reliable, quite detailed, and really working your way through situations very efficiently in order to get the best practical outcome. But Venus isn't always about practicalities. It can be about a little bit of desire, and Mars too. Put the two together. Is there somebody around you that you're encountering on a daily basis in a practical situation who's really of interest to you? Well, if there is, this combination is saying if you can find a way to get the dialogue going in a way that you can help them, for example, that can be a nice way to start to build up the dialogue. And as I've mentioned before with my Valentine's Day special, the most ordinary of places can be a place where a Virgo could definitely find a connection at the moment. But what about work? Now, sometimes when we're someone who can do a lot through other people, we can feel put upon and taken advantage of, and that can be annoying and draining. What Mars and Pluto together have been doing is giving you more power to say enough's enough. But Venus can also give you the judgment of when to relate into people's situation more diplomatically. Libra, having your ruler Venus move into your 5th house. This is gorgeous. It's going to be here for the next 25 days. So it's a marvellous time for you to demonstrate your flair, artistry and creativity. If you are someone who has real talents, you can definitely showcase them in a very, very positive way from here on in. If you're someone who's got a good sense of humour, you're warm, you'd like to have some fun. Life's been very serious for Librans for some years. Now's the chance to see that celestial green light, to give yourself permission to be more playful. But to be more playful, sometimes we have to be a little bit more abandoned. And that means that we let go of maybe being more concerned about what other people think, or we do things for what we want from the situation. So your individuality is really being pushed to the fore now. So, take the limelight onto you. This would be a marvellous time if you are attracted to someone, for example, to try to swoon them a little bit. Maybe a little bit of an old-fashioned concept, but certainly turn on the charm, because there ain't going to be a time like this again when you can get a combination of the raw essence of Mars, the power of Pluto, and the sensuality of Venus, but in the 5th house. That's very Leonian. So your magnificence is definitely maximized at the present time. So go for it over this next 25 days. So Scorpio, something very powerful is changing around your emotional world. That part of you that has probably had an intense desire to be protective and guarded about your inner world, you could find yourself becoming much more emboldened to open up about some more intimate parts of your personality, your history, your family heritage. Now, Venus, of course, is a much more soothing energy than your two rulers of Mars and Pluto. So the fact that Mars can give you the push to make some physical changes to where you live, some big transformations can go on in your psychological and family life. But Venus on this part of your situation could see you wanting to change something decoratively over the next few weeks. And if you do, if you set your mind to making some changes, you're going to want your environment to be, really, really lovely. It's also possible that if you'd like to meet someone in a more relating and partnership way, an introduction could be made through someone you know or someone in your family. And that can happen not just through Venus going through Aquarius, but also the following journey that it goes through the sign of Pisces. So I think the next 6 weeks or so are going to be very, very interesting for you in terms of how you're receiving information within yourself. Some of the objections that you may have had to people or situations in the past, they could be really challenged. A big alteration can be coming for you that can be very, very positive, but at the same time may feel that the foundations in some ways are being eased out from underneath you, which could feel a little bit uncomfortable. But because Mars and Pluto are your two rulers, you're not unaware that sometimes change in life can happen in very radical ways, but it could be that you're the one who chooses to make some big changes, but it may be that it is around where you live or how you live there that's going to be the focus of your interest at the present time. Now, in relationships, if you're in a relationship already and you're finding it more difficult to be receptive to the more emotional dimension, you may find yourself being quite defensive and maybe even a little bit prickly and perhaps, dare I say, even fearful if someone's asking for a change of residency or a change of approach. So you've just got to be careful that you don't let hostility get the upper hand, and Venus in that sense can be a healing energy. So Sagittarius, Venus moving into your 3rd house. Someone's going to be hanging on your every word over the next 2 or 3 weeks. You're saying, oh, come on, Patrick, don't be trite. But when I say your every word, it's the words that really mean a lot to you. So I'm talking about the things you have a lot of conviction around. So the things you take seriously, whether it's a business idea, whether it's your creative interests, whether it's your activities in terms of sport, particularly anything that requires short bursts of athletic energy, the things that you're really excited about, if you're sharing them with other people, they're going to pick up your vibe and be really drawn to it in a superb way. If you are someone who does write already for a living or does a lot of speaking, you're going to be on top form. Yes, it's true that the combination of Venus, Mars and Pluto could see you so determined to articulate your message, it may be a little bit difficult for you to think that someone else doesn't necessarily agree. Now that wouldn't be like you, Sagittarius, would it? One of the things with a Jupiter-ruled sign, Sagittarius, is that there can be a lot of pride in your beliefs. So if you are someone, whether it's having a chat with someone in a bar about, something in current affairs, politics, what's going on in the media, films, whatever, your enthusiasm is usually quite huge. But you could encounter someone at the moment who actually finds the energy around you really, really thrilling. But equally, it is important to understand that your need for movement in your life at the moment is very, very strong. And because Mercury in Aquarius is clashing with Uranus, it's important that you pace yourself over these next few weeks, because there's going to be a lot of electric energy for sure, and no one can achieve any more than one can achieve in any given period. We can't cram too much in. We have to focus on the priorities. So Capricorn, I think Venus moving into Aquarius is really exciting for you in terms of money, because Venus is about money. Yes, I know it's usually talked about as relationships, but it's money. And something can transform for you at this time. If you've really been struggling and grappling away, developing an idea over many moons, perhaps even many years, that hasn't quite got the recognition and the traction that you feel it deserves, then this next few weeks could see a major breakthrough. Of course, the second house can also be our foundations, and Pluto in the mix suggests that something could be shifting around your foundations. Venus adds that lighter touch. I certainly feel that, if you're wanting to be more determined to get a return on your labour, your desire to do that is going to be incredible. But equally, the second house energy here may be about your desire to eat and drink good food and wine. And certainly sensuality and a romantic side can be amped up in a big way. Second house, though, can be a bit stubborn, I suppose, if we think about the Tauran fixed energy and Venus being the ruler of that sign. Have you got certain patterns of approach around your resources that maybe could be upgraded? That's Pluto, isn't it? Asking you to think about your values. Are your values a bit stuck, a bit entrenched? You are a very traditional sign after all. So there's an opportunity to change things, but definitely to benefit too. Aquarius, what are we to make of this event? Well, it occurs exactly on my birthday. 0 degrees Aquarius. I'm 031. So Pluto's just beyond my sun at the moment. Interesting to see what's going to happen. Venus applying to Pluto exactly by the 17th, coming into exact conjunction with Mars by the 22nd. I think it's really the beginning of a new epoch. Things have been really stuck and bogged down and just not going as you want. I think you're going to have a lot more confidence to be more individualistic, because, especially if you've got any Libra in your chart, because you may have had the fourth house energy coming from the ascendant being in Libra late or in Scorpio perhaps, and also the 12th house energy in solar astrology of Pluto moving through that part of your scope. So it just depends on what you have around those elements, those areas, sorry. But certainly your ability to showcase what makes you totally you is given such a wonderful amount of leverage, but it may mean moving away from safe, rather protected approaches and being more on the front foot. And if you're up for that, then really, really can be a dramatic time of new beginnings, excitement. Definitely a time when you can give yourself a makeover. But this is all about self-belief. This is an amazing stellium. Don't waste it. This is about you defining who you want to be and going for it, and not worrying too much if other people see it differently. So Pisces, for you, Venus moving into the 12th house can see you thinking about someone from your past. It can see you being nostalgic. It can see you feeling sentimental. It could see you feeling more inward about relationships. It could possibly mean that if there have been a lot of heavy politics in a relationship that you've been involved with over a long period of time, you might want to actually retreat from that relationship, even all the way to ending it. Because Pluto can be about endings, but also, of course, it can be about rejuvenations, new beginnings. But if there has been some dark stuff going on in your mentality as much as anything, you know, holding on to old grudges, hurts, hostilities, or perhaps there has been an active relationship where there really hasn't been some very nice stuff going on, what all these energies are asking you to do is to really look the issues firmly in the eye. It could be that you could talk to someone who can give you some guidance, some counselling, some insights, some healing workshops. Maybe you're going to want to develop a more spiritual dimension to your life. It's said that Pisces people can be very spiritual. I think that's very, very true. But I think Pisces people can also be very practical, but often like to help people and will help people to the nth degree. Incredibly giving at times. But maybe now the time is to give to you to rejuvenate the parts of your nature that feel bruised or rejected or left out. Anything which is not quite working psychologically. If you do feel excluded in a situation, which is very, very painful indeed, then this is a very enriching time to look at the exclusions and try to understand, have you been removing yourself from the scenario? Perfectly possible with Mercury in the 12th house, or is it someone else that's excluding you? If a relationship hasn't been working for you, or you've not been sure about someone's sincerity, trustworthiness, or honour, you may be about to find out exactly where you stand. But this could also be a time when some rather surprising support comes your way in a very lovely manner. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. If you do want to watch that deep dive for Valentine's Day, it's not corny at all. It is exploring all these issues around relationships. And any likes, comments, shares and subscriptions are greatly appreciated. And if you've yet to see them, my March 2024 deep dive videos for each of the zodiac signs are now out. Please see the link below to click on those. Take care and goodbye.